Staying at home and not leaving home to protest is the best way to ensure that we can recover our lives, recover our jobs, and recover some sense of normality. Don't let selfish behaviour get in the way of this. If, however, you do take the selfish option and leave home to protest, we'll be ready for you. So while I won't go into the details of our tactics and our plans on the day, be assured we'll be ready for you. And we'll be ready for you not only in the city, but we'll be ready for you when you leave home and hop on public transport or use other means to come into the city. We will be ready to meet you where you go mobile, and our aim is to prevent you from coming into the city. So we're not standing by and waiting for people to come into the city. We'll be out there in the suburbs. We'll be on the roads and the public transport system to make sure everyone is complying with the restrictions. So if you find yourself on public transport on Saturday, coming into the city, you can expect that police will want to speak to you. Police will want you to explain which of the permitted reasons you have for leaving home. And of course, if you're leaving home or you've left home in order to protest, if you're outside your 5 kilometre bubble, you'll be held in breach and you will be fined. And if you persist in your behaviour and you don't comply, you will be arrested in the interests of keeping everyone safe. We have hundreds of police ready to respond, including our general duties and specialist police, such as the Public Order Response Unit, Mounted Branch and the Highway Patrol. They've all been rostered and will be deployed to support this operation. Now, this is a very significant operation, and as I said last week, this takes invaluable resources away from local communities to support this. And of course, none of this would be necessary if people actually behaved in accordance with the directions and stayed at home, rather than choosing to go out selfishly and engage in public protest. So we'll be out there with the community, supporting the community and helping people get through these difficult times. But if you're out in the community for a reason that's not allowable and you're out in the community in order to engage in public protest, you can expect to be held to account. Now, I understand that there has been some concern this morning about an arrest affected by Ballarat-based members yesterday involving a female offender, and so I just wanted to address some remarks to that situation. And I've had the benefit of being briefed in relation to the circumstances around that arrest by my colleague from Western Region, Assistant Commissioner Cindy Millen. And of course, you know, I'd be the first to acknowledge the optics, for want of a better description, of arresting a pregnant female. It's never going to look good. I mean, the optics of arresting someone who's pregnant is terrible. And so, of course, we were very keen to understand the circumstances and consider whether or not in all the circumstances that action was appropriate. And I can say to you, based on the briefings that have been provided to me and my colleague, Assistant Commissioner Cindy Millen, we're absolutely satisfied that in those circumstances the members behaved appropriately and in accordance with our policy. Now, I'll make some observations about handcuffing policy. We don't have a rule that in every case when you arrest someone, we handcuff them. The decision to handcuff someone is based on a risk assessment, and that risk assessment takes into account a number of factors, both how an individual presents to the police when they attend to effect an arrest, but also it relates to our knowledge of how we might have engaged with that person or how that person might have engaged with us on prior occasions. And speaking generally, because I don't want to cast aspersions on individuals, these risk assessments are made day in, day out by our people. And the risk assessment is based, as I say, on the circumstances in the given moment and also on the basis of any prior dealings that we've had with that individual. And it's entirely appropriate for our members to take all of those factors into account. and it's clear to me that our members did so on this occasion. The other point is that once we handcuff someone, they're not handcuffed for all time. And in this particular context, bear in mind that the members were attending the premises of this individual with a search warrant, and they were there to conduct a search warrant in the pursuit of evidence which might lead towards us determining whether in fact the offence of incitement had been made out. Now, this wasn't some casual encounter. This was our members attending a premises to execute a search warrant because we believed, on reasonable grounds, that the individual and the premises which was the subject of that search would provide to us evidence of involvement in that serious offence of inciting protest. And in this occasion, it was a protest in Ballarat. Now, when you execute a search warrant, and this is the case for any members, of course, there is a heightened risk around that. And in the initial stages, when you enter a premises to execute a search warrant, you want to make sure that everyone at that place is accounted for. You want to make sure that people who are there and your members are safe. And so within that context, again, that's a number of risk factors which are taken into account as to whether or not someone might be handcuffed. And then, of course, once the premises is cleared and members are satisfied that risks might have been addressed and alleviated and can be managed, handcuffs are removed. And in this case, handcuffs were removed from that individual as soon as the premises was secure. And in fact, once the handcuffs were removed and the situation was safe, she was allowed to get changed and then she was taken back to the station for questioning. I'd also make this observation. I mean, I've seen the footage and, you know, in my assessment, the members have conducted themselves entirely reasonably. They've been polite, they've been professional. When the individual indicated that she might be late for an appointment at the hospital, our members actually contacted the hospital and made arrangements for an alternate appointment. So our members did everything that they could to both secure their safety and the safety of the people involved, but also to assist this individual with her concerns about, we understand it was a check-up. So the point really that I want to make is that while this deadly virus doesn't discriminate, we won't discriminate, and we can't discriminate in holding people to account. I'd also make this observation. We take offenders and suspects as we find them. You know, we do to a certain extent have access to information about people, but in the end we have to take people as we find them. And that doesn't detract, of course, from our obligation to hold people to account. I mean, if we started to say, oh, well, look, we can't possibly hold this person to account because of a particular attribute, I mean, where do we draw the line? The key piece here is we're focusing on behaviour, and in this case we're alleging that this individual engaged in serious criminal behaviour, inciting a public protest at a time when public protest is unlawful. And we've been very clear about that. I mean, I don't think I could have been clearer last week. We said we'd be coming out and we'd be holding people to account, and that's exactly what we've done. I mean, you'd have to have been on Mars not to know that. So I have to say that if someone looked me in the eye and I was out dealing with an individual and they said, oh, I didn't know that I couldn't protest, I'd have to say, come on, don't take me for a fool. You have to have been on Mars not to know that. You know, in my view, that clearly applied in those circumstances. I mean, I'm happy to answer more questions about it down the track, but I did just think I should make it very clear that we absolutely support our members in relation to that matter, and I'd say going forward, absolutely support my members in holding selfish people to account for committing such serious breaches of the Chief Health Officer directions.